who had to approve my story ideas. He was enthusiastic about us doing the profile of a contract killer. But he said we could not publish such an outlandish, shocking story without at least giving the real name of the person involved. And if the killer agreed to pose for a photo, better still. Each time I talked to Júlio, I became increasingly fascinated by his story. But at the same time, my hopes of him agreeing to us publishing his name and photo grew fainter and fainter. In the short term, at least. For the next 7 years, I continued my conversations with the man who killed close to 500 people and never had any other profession. With every phone call, our relationship became increasingly close. I felt as if he grew to trust me more and to tell his stories more sincerely and with greater emotion. Occasionally, I would remind him of my wish to publish the story of his life, by now with the idea of making it into a book, but repeated that, to do so, it was absolutely necessary for him to authorize me to give his real name and a photograph. Júlio remained adamant. I was sure, though, that one day he would change his mind. This happened in January 2006. During one of our conversations, Júlio told me he had decided to abandon his life as a killer in order to live with his wife and 2 children in another state far away from Maranhão. On hearing this, I managed to convince him that his greatest fear, that of being arrested if his name appeared in a book, no longer made any sense. Given that he was living in another state and leading a completely different life from the one he had led until now, the police would never find him. "But if you put my photo in the book, they'll get me," Júlio said. I explained that the photo was indispensable, but that we could doctor it so that his face would be unrecognizable. And as a proof of the extreme trust he had in me, he finally agreed to let me put his name and photograph in the book. This book. Yet something important was still missing. To meet the killer in person. Up until then, all my conversations with Júlio Santana had been by telephone. I had no idea what he looked like, how he walked, how he sat, how he smiled. I did not know the house he lived in or his wife and children. In order to get to know him and his universe, in April 2006, I traveled to Porto Franco, where Júlio and his family lived. I spent 3 days there with a calm, good-humored, home-loving man who was affectionate toward his wife and children and very religious. A man apparently nothing out of the ordinary. A very different profile from that of the killers that abound in literature and the cinema. With 3 notebooks stuffed with notes exclusively from my conversations with Júlio, I turned to another aspect of my work. To find other sources, both documents and people, who would confirm or not the stories told by the protagonist of this book. To do this, I interviewed almost 40 people. From policemen to gold prospectors who worked at Serra Pelada, and including relatives of people killed by Júlio. I also had access to police investigations and judicial files. It was a relief to discover that these sources, both people and documents, convincingly confirmed everything Júlio had told me, as well as providing me with detailed information about the cases referred to in this book. One of the most surprising testimonies was that of the former parliamentarian and president of the Workers' Party, José Jeonino Neto. In his conversations with me, Júlio Santana had claimed that he had taken part in the capture of José Jeonino during the guerrilla of Araguaia in April 1972. To test the truth of this story, I went to interview Jeonino at his house in São Paulo. During our conversation, I told Jeonino that one of my sources, I did not reveal who it was, had claimed he had helped capture him in Araguaia. I recounted the story exactly as Júlio had told it to me, down to the smallest details, such as the color of the dog that was in the hut where they captured the erstwhile guerrillero. When I finished, José Jeonino confirmed everything. There's no